In June 2015, Bridgewater marked its 40th anniversary, an amazing milestone we celebrated by throwing a big party. We had a lot to celebrate, since by most measures, no firm in our industry has been as successful. Key people who had been a part of our journey from its outset and throughout our 40 years got up to speak. Each of them described the evolution of the company through their eyes. Hope you're all well and having a great day so far. We're going to start the day with Principles by Dalio, which is a great way to start the day. I'm always so thankful that you all come and join me for this reading, which I always enjoy a lot. So we have been talking about philanthropy in our last session, and today we're going to talk about Bridgewater turning 40, and we're going to start the next chapter, chapter 7, my last year and my greatest challenge, 2016 to 2017. Okay, let's get into it, and I'm sure that we're going to have lots of things to think about. I'll share my ideas as well. I'll tell you how you can watch the rest of the videos and how you can get in touch with me, ask your questions, get those answered, and lots of other really amazing things. How you can also become more of an investor if you haven't started, and how to get to become an even better investor if you have started. So let's get into it. Here we go. Bridgewater turns 40. In June 2015, Bridgewater marked its 40th anniversary, an amazing milestone we celebrated by throwing a big party. We had a lot to celebrate, since by most measures, no firm in our industry has been as successful. Key people who had been a part of our journey from its outset and throughout our 40 years got up to speak. Each of them described the evolution of the company through their eyes, how some things had changed over the years while others had stayed the same. Most importantly, our culture of striving for excellence in work and excellence in relationships by being radically truthful and radically transparent with each other. They recounted how we uniquely and repeatedly tried new things, failed, learned from our failures, improved, and tried again, doing that over and over in an upward spiral. When it was my turn to speak, I wanted to convey what I had always tried to give the people at Bridgewater and what I wanted them to have in the future without me. A community in which you always have the right and obligation to make sense of things in a process for working yourself through disagreements. For example, a real functioning idea meritocracy. I want you to think, not follow, while recognizing that you can be wrong and that you have weaknesses. And I want to help you get the most likely best answers, even if you personally don't believe that they're the best answers. I want to give you radically open-mindedness and an idea meritocracy that will take you from being trapped in your own heads to having access to the best minds in the world to help you make the best decisions for you and for our community. I want to help you all struggle well and evolve to get the most out of life. Though there were still important things that had to be done, at the time I thought that we were wrapping up my transition nicely. I had no idea how difficult the next year would be. Okay, chapter 7, here we go. My last year and my greatest challenge. But we are by no means at the end of the book yet. There's still a lot to go. That's all we've read so far. Okay, here we go. While even before the 40th anniversary, we had all been aware that our transition wasn't going as smoothly as we'd hoped, in the months that followed, our problems came to a head in ways that caught us off guard. While the investment part of Bridgewater was better than ever, other parts of the business, like the technology and recruiting areas, were slipping. I was no longer CEO, so it was not my job to manage the company. As chairman, my job was to oversee the CEOs, to make sure that they were managing it well. And Greg Jensen and Aileen Murray, the CEOs at the time, were clearly overstretched. We all agreed that the company wasn't being managed adequately, but we disagreed on what to do about it. Disagreements like these were expected, as we always want everyone to think independently and argue for what they view as best. That is why we have principle and processes for resolving them. So over a period of several weeks, we exchanged our views. Then key parties presented their perspectives and recommendations to members of our management committee and our stakeholders committee, which is essentially the Bridgewater board, who considered the alternate paths and ultimately voted on them. The most important decision that came out of this process was announced in March 2016. Greg would step out of his co-CEO role so that he could focus all of his attention on his co-chief investment officer role, which he handled with Rob, Prince, and me. And I would temporarily join Aileen as co-CEO while we implemented the structural changes needed to allow Bridgewater to work well without me. Back into the CEO role, slightly different, but yes, there are some challenges, so they need to be addressed. While that wasn't the outcome any of us had hoped for when I first stepped out as CEO and passed it on to others, it wasn't entirely unexpected. Our struggles had been apparent for some time, and we tried different iterations. We knew that leadership transitions are never easy, and our modus operandi has always been to try, fail, diagnose, redesign, and try again. That's what we were doing. Now was the time for a leadership change. Still, this particular failure was painful, especially for Greg, excuse me, especially for Greg and me. I realized that I had handed Greg too heavy a load in expecting him to carry out both the co-CEO and the co-CIO roles. I regret that mistake more than any other I'd made in running Bridgewater because it hurt both us and the company. I had not only mentored Greg, but he had been like a son to me for nearly 20 years. He and I both wanted and expected him to run the company. The pain of this failure was made worse, especially for Greg, by the sensational and inaccurate accounts that appeared in the media. Story after story portrayed it as a bitter death match between two titans rather than what it really was, which was people who loved Bridgewater working through their disagreements in an idea meritocratic way. This was Greg's going into the abyss experience on his own hero's journey. And it was also that for me and for a number of other leaders of the company, and not just because it was so painful, but because it led us to a metamorphosis that improved us a lot. And very often this is the case. When we go through these massive, massive challenges, we think that it's the end of the world, but really there's always something good in it if you just look a little bit deeper. And this is exactly what ended up happening, obviously, and we'll find out more about that in just a second. Greg is 25 years younger than me. I often think about where I was at his age and how much I've learned in the years since. I know Greg will go on to succeed remarkably in his own way. I was pleased that we both came through this stronger, and especially pleased that our systems for identifying and resolving problems has worked as well as they had. While we all had different perspectives, this case reaffirmed our belief that our collective idea meritocratic decision-making process would produce better results than any one of us could have done. It was having such a process, along with our deep relationships, that kept us together. I realized again that what I didn't know was much greater than what I did. In this case, not knowing how to transition out of the founder-leader role. So I reached out to some of the greatest experts I could speak with for advice. Perhaps the best advice we received came from management expert Jim Collins, who told us that to transition well, there are only two things you need to do. Put capable CEOs in place and have a capable governance system to replace the CEOs if they're not capable. That was what I had failed to do, and what I now had a second shot at doing right. So I began to think about governance in a way that I never had before. Simply put, governance is the system of checks and balances ensuring that an organization will be stronger than whoever happens to be leading it at any one time. Because I was a founder entrepreneur, I had run Bridgewater for 35 years with no formal rules to check and balance me, though I had created an informal governance system by having me report to our management committee as a check on my decision-making. While that informal system had worked for me, it could not work well without me. Clearly, we needed to build a new governance system that would allow Bridgewater to retain its unique way of being and its uncompromising standards, no matter who was in charge, and build it to be resilient enough to change the company's management if that was required. I went on to do that with the help of others, and we are doing that still. And this is very, very important. So it's good, even when you are the founder, to have a structure and a system for you to be able to work within, and to have procedures and policies and different things that you come up with every time there is a challenge. So if there is a problem in the company, that you have a system for dealing with that problem, and you look at that problem individually and say, if this happens again, then this is how we solved it, and so we can solve it again in this way. The more you have those things in place, the easier it becomes to transition, because now you have a book that people who are going to run the company after you can follow. But if you don't have that, then what you're going to need is to start putting that together. I do a lot of work with systems, and one of the things that I've always learned is that you want to write down everything that goes well and everything that doesn't go well. When I was still back in hotels, wow, this is a long time ago, back in probably around 2004, I actually came up with an idea, 2004 or 2005. I came up with an idea and I said, imagine if everything that went well or didn't go so well was written down, and then there's this book created, or this video series created, where new people who come and work at the company can actually watch those videos and learn about what went well and what didn't go well, and how we react and what we do in certain circumstances. And I think a lot of companies are implementing this nowadays. So yes, so many ideas that I've had that other people have since implemented that I never got around to. But I suppose there's only so much you can focus on. So all good. Let's continue. I had learned that it's wrong to assume either that a person in one role will be successful in another role, or that the ways one person operates well will work well for another. This difficult year also taught me a lot about the people around me, especially David McCormick and Eileen Murray, who showed their commitments to our shared vision as numerous other people did. There were some failures that we would have rather not had, but that was to be expected given our unique culture of trial and error and learning from mistakes. Thanks to the changes we put into place, I was about to step out of my temporary stint as CEO after 1 year in April 2017. As I write these words in 2017, I view this year as the one final one in my transition from the second phase of my life to the third, when I will have finished passing along the knowledge I have gathered along the way. And as Joseph Campbell described it, I will be free to live and free to die. But right now, I'm not thinking about the dying part. I'm thinking about how to live freely, and I'm excited about it. That's the end of chapter 7. This brings us to chapter 8. Looking back from a higher level, we'll read a little bit more before we finish. As I look back on my experiences, it's interesting to reflect on how my perspectives have changed. When I started out, each and every twist and turn I encountered, whether in the markets or in my life in general, looked really big and dramatic up close, like unique life or death experiences that were coming at me fast. With time and experience, I came to see each encounter as another one of those, and I could approach more calmly and analytically, like a biologist might approach an encounter with a threatening creature in the jungle. First identifying its species, and then drawing on his prior knowledge about its expected behaviors, reacting appropriately. When I was faced with such types of situations I had encountered before, I drew on the principles I had learned for dealing with them. But when I ran into ones I hadn't seen before, I would be painfully surprised. Studying all these painful first-time encounters, I learned that even if they hadn't happened to me, most of them had happened to other people in other times and places, which gave me a healthy respect for history, a hunger to have a universal understanding of how reality works, and the desire to build timeless and universal principles for dealing with it. This is why I really love surrounding myself with the best kind of people who have gone through many, many different kinds of challenges. So people who are a little bit older, who have experienced things that I might not have experienced yet, or who have experienced things in a certain way, and I actually seek out that person because I know that they've experienced something that I'm going through right now that I'm challenged with. So this is a great thing for you to be able to do. Watching the same things happen again and again, I began to see reality as a gorgeous perpetual motion machine in which causes become effects and become causes of new effects and so on. I realized that reality was, if not perfect, at least what we are given to deal with, so that any problem or frustrations I had with it were more productively directed to dealing with them effectively than complaining about them. I will definitely absolutely agree with that. There's two things that you can do. You can either take a challenging situation and you can complain about it. And complaining is an action which takes time, but it doesn't actually lead to any solutions to that problem. Whereas if you take a problem and rather than complaining about it, you are looking for solutions. You are talking to other people. You are taking action to rectify. You are testing different things to see if you can rectify. Now you're in creation mode, which allows you to actually do something about it. And you might not find the solution immediately, but you are working on the solution. Whereas when you're just complaining about a situation and telling people how bad it is and how terrible it is for you, nothing is actually happening. So there is not much point to that. I came to understand that my encounters were tests of my character and creativity. Over time, I came to appreciate what a tiny and short-lived part of that remarkable system I am, and how it's both good for me and good for the system for me to know how to interact with it well. That's interesting because, yes, our part in this whole world is so small. So we only influence a tiny little bit out of the whole when it comes to life. So we are going to lend our expertise and our thoughts and ideas to only this tiny little part of life. And there are so many other times in history when other people have had other ideas. Take, for example, the idea of slavery and the idea of slavery now. And that in those days, that was the norm. And that's how people saw the world as correct and how things were done. And now there is a completely different way of thinking about it. And our impact is only so small when you compare the number of years that slavery has been in existence throughout most of human history. So it becomes very interesting to see it from that perspective and to understand that we don't really play such a large role in this life. There are thousands of other people, millions of other people who are also adding their input and adding their stamps on life. So that's why I like to take life a little bit easier and to look at it from a broader perspective, but still being able to achieve my goals, but looking at it from a broader perspective, knowing that I don't have that much influence, that there are only so many things that I can do. But at the same time, I do have choices that I can make, and there are things that I can do in order to be able to influence the situation to a certain degree. It's all very, very interesting. In gaining this perspective, I began to experience painful moments in a radically different way. Instead of feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, I saw pain as nature's reminder that there is something important for me to learn. Encountering pains and figuring out the lessons they were trying to give me became sort of a game to me. The more I played it, the better I got at it. The less painful those situations became, and the more rewarding the process of reflecting, developing principles, and then getting rewards for using those principles became. I learned to love my struggles, which I suppose is a healthy perspective to have, like learning to love exercising, which I haven't managed to do yet. In my early years, I looked up to extraordinarily successful people thinking that they were successful because they were extraordinary. After I got to know such people personally, I realized that all of them, like me, like everyone, made mistakes, struggled with their weaknesses, and didn't feel that they were particularly special or great. They are no happier than the rest of us, and they struggle just as much or more than average folks. Even after they surpass their wildest dreams, they still experience more struggle than glory. This is certainly being true for me. While I surpassed my wildest dreams decades ago, I am still struggling today. In time, I realized that the satisfaction of success doesn't come from achieving your goals, but from struggling well. To understand what I mean, imagine your greatest goal, whatever it is, making a ton of money, winning an Academy Award, running a great organization, being great at a sport. Now imagine instantaneously achieving it. You'd be happy at first, but not for long. You would soon find yourself needing something else to struggle for. Just look at people who attain their dreams early. The child star, the lottery winner, the professional athlete who peaks early. They typically don't end up happy unless they get excited about something else bigger and better to struggle for. Since life brings both ups and downs, struggling well doesn't just make your ups better, it makes your downs less bad. I'm still struggling, and I will until I die, because even if I try to avoid the struggles, they will find me. Thanks to all that struggling and learning, I've done everything I wanted to do, gone everywhere I wanted to go, met whomever I wanted to meet, gotten everything I wanted to own, had a career that has been enthralling and most rewarding, had many wonderful relationships. I have experienced the full range from having nothing to having an enormous amount, and from being a nobody to being a somebody, so I know the differences. While I experienced them going from the bottom up rather than from the top down, which was preferable and probably influenced my perspective, my assessment is that the incremental benefits of having a lot, excuse me, and being on top are not nearly as great as most people think. Having the basics, a good bed to sleep in, good relationships, good food, and good sex is most important. And those things don't get much better when you have a lot of money, or much worse when you have less. And the people one meets at the top aren't necessarily more special than those one meets at the bottom or in between. The marginal benefits of having more fall off pretty quickly. In fact, having a lot more is worse than having a moderate amount. More because it comes with heavy burdens. Being on top gives you a wider range of options, but it also requires more of you. Being well known is probably worse than being anonymous, all things considered. And while the beneficial impact one can have on others is great, when you put it in perspective, it is still infinitesimally small. And people are going to judge you, and they're going to set expectations for you. And if you do anything, people will very often say that you are doing the wrong thing, even though they don't know exactly what it is that you've done. They don't know that it's actually a good thing, but they will perceive it as something bad. And people who don't like you will automatically criticize you. So there are lots of really challenging things to being super, super successful. For all those reasons, I cannot say that having an intense life filled with accomplishments is better than having a relaxed life with savoring. Though I can say that being strong is better than being weak, and that struggling gives one strength. It's true that very often you'll find that there are strong men, and then strong men create easy times, and then those easy times lead to weak men, and those weak men end up having struggles, and that makes them strong. And then those strong men give their children an easier life because they create easy times. And then those easy times again lead to weak men, and it just cycles through and through and through. My nature being what it is, I would not have changed my life, but I can't tell you what is best for you. That is for you to choose. What I have seen is that the happiest people discover their own nature and match their life to it. Now that my desire to succeed has given way to a desire to help others succeed, that's become my current struggle. It's now clear to me that my purpose, your purpose, and the purpose of everything else is to evolve and to contribute to evolution in some small way. I didn't think about that at the start. I just went after things that I wanted. But along the way, I evolved, and now I am sharing these principles with you to help you evolve too. I realize that passing on knowledge is like passing on DNA. It is more important than the individual because it lives way beyond the individual life. This is my attempt to help you succeed by passing along to you what I learned about how to struggle well, or at the very least, to help you get the most out of each unit of effort you put in. That's the end of that chapter, and it brings us to the next section of the book, which is called Principles. So we're going to start getting into actual principles. Let's have a look, see which one it is that we are going to get into first. Life principles. Okay, so we will start with life principles. When we start reading again next, I hope you enjoyed that. The transition, the struggles, the understanding that we only play a small, infinitesimally small role in this world, but that there is so much that we can do around that. I would love to know what you think of this chapter. If you have any questions, if there's anything that confused you or that you weren't certain about. We had a little bit less economics and less financial things in this chapter. And I think it might be a little bit less in the next couple of chapters. But we'll see what we can do about that. But if you would like to watch the rest of the recording, you can find them at the YouTube channel, The Passive Cashflow Club. You'll find all sorts of videos there. Make sure you subscribe because we'll also be happy to answer your questions. We have some of them already going up. And make sure you subscribe so that you know when your questions are actually uploaded so that you can find the answers. And make sure that you subscribe so that you also know when other random videos with questions and answers are going to be uploaded, because it might be a question that is relevant to you. If you'd like to ask any questions, or if you'd like to join for a game of cash flow so that you can learn to be able to invest and struggle better, then you can definitely come and join us, and you'll learn about real estate, the stock market, business, all of these different kinds of investments, and we'll also show you how to transition from just playing the game to real life. And if you're already playing real life, we'll show you how to set better strategies and then how to do that in real life as well. It's all about real life, because I used to have so many people that would come and play the game and they were doing nothing in real life. So I am very, very passionate about helping people to play the game, to understand the principles and enjoy and see the beauty of what it is that they can achieve through it, but then also implement it in real life. Very, very important. So get in touch on Instagram if you'd like to ask a question or if you'd like to come and play. So you can find us at business_team_6_official, business_team_6_official. Really looking forward to hearing from you, answering your questions, and seeing you at Cashflow at some stage, especially the online version, which takes it to a whole new level, which has a lot more realism and will give you a lot of extra tools in order to be able to understand what you need to do in real life to become a much better investor. So looking forward to that. Reach out, and I am going to start my day. I hope you're going to have a great day. Remember to make the switch to unlock your rich. If you keep doing everything the way you've always done it, nothing much will change. So that's why I've set up the Cashflow membership and the mentoring and everything else that I am doing at the moment. So make sure that you make that switch to unlock your rich. I'm going to head over to the Big O, finish this recording, and I'll see you all tomorrow for another reading. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all then.